Welcome to another episode of the Chronicles of Mister. I am Mr. Pierre, and I'm joined by the one and only Nikki Rhodes. So, Miss Rhodes, thank you very much for spending some time on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Being able to see you on TikTok, be able to listen to your own podcast, the real. Go ahead and plug
Oh yeah, the real teachers of Atlanta. Myself
Excellent.
and two of my fellow teachers at my same school.
Yeah,
We're just waiting to
real.
be discovered.
Hey, and I'm hoping that anyone who's listening to this podcast will go ahead and give a listen to yours as
Oh yeah,
well.
yeah.
Where can the folks, I guess, see or hear your podcast?
On YouTube right now, we opted to go with more of it's a podcast style vlog. So we've
Okay.
been dubbing it the vlogcast. And similar to you, just wanting to get the voice of educators out, but really kind of almost like a reality TV style. We're just sharing our personal experiences, advice we'd give other teachers, just how to deal with different situations that we personally dealt with, because it has been wild these past, 4.5, 5 years. So
Yeah.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah. And so let's start there. How long have you been in education, and sort of what brought you to the field?
Well, I came to teaching as a second career. So, second career as an educator. I've always had a love for sciences and mathematics. That was always my strong suit in school. I actually was tutoring some girls from my church. I lead the youth dance ministry at my church. So, again, just I've always had a draw to younger, I won't say little kids because I am by far not elementary style. However, I'm nice, but I'm mouthy, so no elementary school.
Yeah,
But
I understand.
they were middle school age, and I would just, it just kind of like a natural draw. And then one of them was like, "Why don't you just become a teacher?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. I could not." And I honestly kind of just brushed off the idea, but you know how people just kind of drop stuff in the atmosphere, and it's like it just keeps sitting at you. And so
Yeah.
some unfortunate events happened. I guess they weren't unfortunate. I guess it was really more so divine, I guess. But I ended up subbing in elementary school and middle schools and loved middle school, loved kind of the sass of the kids. I know, like no one says that, but I do. and, and once I started subbing, I was like, this is easy. Like I can do this without taking any test without studying. So then ultimately I ended up testing and it was like, boom, 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 done. And I was like,
Nice.
maybe I could really do this. And I always had really good connections with the kids. I really did hate elementary school. I did teach that for like a whole year. It was awful. It was third grade. Just to put that out there, some people can do it, not me.
I hear you. I hear you.
But yeah,
I'm middle
that's how
school
I
myself.
got there.
Yeah.
I love middles. They're so sweet.
Yeah.
Like people hate it, but I love it. I love them so much.
No, I agree with you. I recognize middle school is my lane. That's where I'm most effective. I can go down to the littles, to kinder, like you said, second to third grade, give them about 30 minutes and then I'm tapping out.
Yes.
But middle school is my jam as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think elementary is tough because for me, you have to teach all those subjects, and I'm like, absolutely not. That's too
Yeah.
much. I've
Yeah.
struggled to plan for math. It's too much.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a lot.
Same. So, knowing that it is not easy, knowing that it's not a walk in the park, that's saying like those who can't teach, obviously are from people who've never taught before. What has kept you in this work?
The kids, honestly, like I'll be frank because that's where I am in life at this point. I don't feel like I feel like I was kind of like sucked into the school that I'm at. Not in the best way, but I'm there, right? And I think that the kids that I get to teach have been I feel like they've given more to me personally than I've ever given to them. Just a lot. I feel so much more like I understand myself a lot more. Like I feel like I've grown through teaching. So I feel like that, like personal growth has kept me, but also just seeing like how many of them just kind of connect. And I think the thing that is probably gonna sound like so stupid, but one of the things that always gets me is like when a kid slips up and calls you mom or auntie or something, and it's like,
Yeah.
I mean that much to you that you accidentally called me that? Like,
Yeah.
people think that is so weird. Like, oh, it's an accident. Like,
Yeah.
no, because you have to understand, like, if I call you mom, like, you hold a different space in my life,
Yep.
in my heart. And so for me, not that I hear like every single kid doesn't do that, but it's just kind of those quick reminders, like, hey, you're making a difference. But it's truly
Mm-hmm.
the kids, like behavior wise, I don't care, none of that stuff. It's really the relationship that you build. And I thoroughly enjoyed that part, like every day.
I mean, you touched on a couple of things. Number one, um, if you're able to create and build relationships with the kiddos, that they're
Mm-hmm.
so comfortable with you, they feel that they are safe enough to call you mom or auntie or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that you know that they're in a space mentally, emotionally, all of it to be able to learn.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, that's the ultimate goal for us is like, hey, we're trying to impart, be this, how would you say, a mediator, a giver, or whatever of
Yep.
this knowledge for these kiddos so that it's better. So that's just on point.
Yep.
I had a conversation with another teacher because you mentioned too that this wasn't your first career.
Mm-hmm.
The training that you got, did you feel as if like you were adequately trained before you got into the classroom?
Absolutely not. What? I used to have a coworker that it was such a crass statement, but the gist of the statement was that there was basically, he would say in much ruder terms that there's nothing you could have done to prepare me for this. But I liked his version better, but I'll say that.
Okay.
I'll text it to you later. But
I
it was really terrible.
Keep it real. Keep it real.
It was so awful. And but it was true. Like, I do not believe that now, or has there ever been, a teacher preparation program, whether it is second career teachers or I'm fresh out of high school, college, and I want to go be an educator. There's not a program in the world that prepares you for right now. It's all built on retrospective ideals. Yeah. So no one, and I don't even want to say no one's thinking forward, but teachers, we're thinking about tomorrow, because we recognize that these kids today, like, I've had a student, I've told to their face, like, I don't ever want you to be my doctor. Like, I don't want you to be the person that I'm depending on to save my life. And that statement was the one that made this kid be like, oh, like, you don't trust me? I was like, no, because you won't even do the bare minimum. And you want me to trust you with my life? Like, if I'm laid up in a hospital bed and it's between the kid who played and skipped class and the kid who focused in class and asked questions, I'm choosing them. Like, I'm not choosing your class skipping self. And the kids start to think about it, and it starts to resonate with them. But I'm by no means nice about any of it. Like, I'm very honest and blunt with my kids, and that's how I felt about it. But there's not anything that could prepare you to deal with kids right now. But we think about it as, we know that those are the doctors and the lawyers and the teachers and the police officers and the presidents, right? The legislatures, judges of the world tomorrow. And so we're thinking about it, and we're thinking about, I don't want the kid that you keep picking on to be the one that has to be the one who's in charge. I don't want them to be my superintendent. They're going to hate me. But the training is all built on stuff from 20 years ago. And when I was in the classroom, and when you were in the classroom, you had 15 kids and recess. I don't have that. I have 37 and a shoebox. So,
Ms. Rhodes, you're keeping it real, and I appreciate that, because that's part of what I'm hoping with this podcast, is just to let folks know, folks who are getting into the profession, be honest with you, because the thing that I dislike seeing is that a teacher who comes in is not fully aware of what they're getting into, and then in a year or two, they're gone. Yep. Or, in some cases, half the year. And then they're gone.
I know a few of those too, yep.
Because I've seen it, and I'm sure you've seen it as well too.
Oh, yeah.
And so to speak on just that as well, I had a conversation with another educator yesterday, Miss Massey, where she was saying, like, yo, there are certain things that we can be doing now to ensure that the teachers who are coming up right now are going to be well equipped. If you could say there's one thing, maybe that, hey, it would have been helpful if I knew this one thing prior to coming in, what would that be? for you?
That boundaries really are okay. Like having boundaries is really an okay thing. And saying no to your principal, to your administrators, like being very serious about drawing that line. That is something that it took me, I want to say last year was the year that I really got it. But it took some real breakdowns for me to be like, okay, to preserve myself, because that's important. And I think, but it's not just between you and admin, right? Because the boundaries aren't, the purpose of that, just to give context, is not to put a barrier up and block communication. It is to facilitate that communication, but also put it in a way that you're forced to be respected and understood.
Yeah.
I'm not working past my contracted hours. I'm going to do my job efficiently, effectively, to the best of my ability from the time I'm here until the time I leave. I'm not doing more than that, because when I go home, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, right? I'm a member of society. I'm a church
You're
member.
a human being.
I have things, right? Whatever it is, I am outside of school. That's even if I'm a single female in my 20s, chilling. That's my prerogative. So, but I do honestly believe, and I feel like as women, like, I'm not saying that guys don't go through it, but I feel like the men that I've met in education are a lot more assertive as far as setting those boundaries, and they're like, I'm not doing that, and they're fine, and their no is a lot more respected than those of female teachers. And that's my perspective. That's what I've experienced.
I agree with you.
But I think if you come in the door with that and be okay with people's feelings, being hurt about it, but set boundaries with your parents, set boundaries with your students, and set boundaries with yourself. And respecting that, that's the thing. Because if you don't do it for you, like I tell my kids, if you don't respect what yourself, you cannot expect me or anyone else to do it. Like you can't hold me accountable for what you won't do. You know what I mean? I think that's, honestly, I wish someone had told me that and like really drilled that home. Like that should have been a class. What are appropriate boundaries for an educator? Like that's a course in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on it too, of like, setting those boundaries for yourself. What is it that you're looking for year 1 through 5? What is it that you're looking for year 6 through 10, etc.? You know, if you are a person who's like, you know what, I enjoy being in the classroom, but I recognize that I would like to be a dean or an AP or a principal. What do I need to do now in order to get there, prepare myself, so when that opportunity is present, I'm ready to walk through that door? And like you said, how to set boundaries for kids and families and whatnot, all of that is super important. But you're absolutely right. It's been a while since I was in college, because this is year 16 for me, to be able to be taught that. So
let's see how I don't want to talk about how long that's been.
But this is what I think is possible, because a lot of folks who, when I tell them 15, they're like, "Oh, Mr. Pierre, I don't think I got that." I think you.
I can tell you, I don't. I'm ready.
If you are in a place that is nourishing you, that allows you to be your full self, then that number seems very, very possible. Because like you mentioned, for the folks who came up 20 some odd years ago, where they didn't have the stresses that we have, they didn't have just the ridiculousness that we're seeing today. They didn't have kiddos who have literally in the palm of their hands access to so much information. So you were literally the fountain of knowledge, if you will. If you didn't want to be a gatekeeper and you were sharing that, then it was just like, all right, Mr. Pierre said X, Y, Z. What do I have to contest him? Whereas nowadays it's like, Mr. Pierre said such and such, but go verify that. You got this supercomputer in your hand. Let's check. Is Mr. Pierre right? Because he makes mistakes too. All right, let's check it.
Yes.
And so it's a totally different world that we're in now. But if you're in a place where your coworkers, like you said, you have those boundaries where you're respected there, your AP, your principal is respecting you, your teachers and your students likewise are feeding you and recognize that, hey, this is symbiotic. I'm here for you. You're here for me. We got this beautiful dance. Then that number doesn't seem wild. It's only when it's just like, yo, for real, y'all, this foolishness, that you're ready to dip out. So I think the more we can create spaces where teachers are able to identify, hey, yo, this is not the space for me. Like, I think the better we'll all be.
I feel like one of the things, so I'm a data person. That's what I did prior to. I'm very much into analytics. So I'll say two things to what you said. With as far as um, setting those boundaries and understanding that everybody's aware of them, you're teaching your students how to do that as well.
Exactly.
Along with that, one of the things you mentioned was like the kids have so much access. I use that as a means to teach. Like you have to really lean into where kids are. Like my kids at school was how I got started on TikTok. I was not like my students a few years ago single-handedly made me viral, literally.
Yeah.
And it was all because of a joke between myself and another one of my students, which still, like, he's in ninth grade. Oh my God, this year. And they still call me. I have a whole phone I have to pay for because they all have that number. And when they call, I answer. When they text because they need help with their homework in a grade that I haven't taught, I'm still there because those relationships you build are lasting. So that's one thing. But leaning into where they are, leaning into their love of social media, their love of gaming, their love of sports. Like I do happen to like college football. I'm a huge Miami Hurricanes fan. Go you. Just put that plug out there, even though I'm not from Miami. We won't talk about that. But I used social media. So between making short videos to tutor them, prep for a test, I would go live to do test prep for them. And they would join the live. Same kids that would be sleeping in class, would be live learning. And it would baffle me that they would join that. But leaning into it, I would say, I challenge you to find another way to do it. Like you figure it out. And the amount of studying they didn't think they were doing because they were trying to prove me wrong was amazing. Because they wanted me to be wrong so bad. They would have learned it. They have learned it. That's fine. However you get it. You want me to be wrong? Prove me wrong. If that means you studied for an hour trying to see if I could be wrong, fine. You got what I needed. That's good. And lastly, when we talk about teachers leaving the classroom, sadly, I think I've seen it a couple times. I don't think that I've seen it enough times to say this is definitive. However, I have noticed that because Title I schools, which typically are Black and brown, they're us, are underfunded, you get a lot more of like I'll say it like this, the crap administrators. They kind of just get to live there because the expectations in those schools are so low. And I hate that, right? So you get the administrators who are like on their last leg. They would never make it in like a top tier school in the same district, right? They wouldn't be able to do what they do there. They would be able to do where they are. And then us as parents, right? Because I have my own 2 kids. Us as parents being present and not allowing that kind of crap. Principals can be terminated a lot faster than the teachers, but the teachers are under the directive of the principal at that school, under those administrators. And I think that parents, they shoot too low. They call the teacher and they want to call us the carpet. And it's like, I'm not the one who's in control. Like, you're yelling at me, but it's not me. And you try to explain that and they don't see it because people think that principals are untouchable, but they're the easiest to touch, honestly. But the sad reality is when schools are underfunded and they're under poor leadership, you have higher teacher turnover. We've had 50% of our staff leave almost every year I've been there. When I got there, my mentor, my second year teaching, I was the senior teacher. That tells you something. My mentor was fresh out of college and had been teaching for 1 year. That was who mentored me. Literally, he still couldn't put in grades. Like he was still trying to remember how to do that. And I was like, I'm supposed to learn from you. And I wasn't mad at him. It wasn't his fault. That's who was available. That's just what it was. And so those are my 3 things. If parents are listening, go advocate. If your child goes to a Title I school, go advocate. You don't like the curriculum, it's available to you 24/7 online at your state's educational website. Go advocate. You got the power. We don't. It's not us. We just are here.
No, I hear you. And I think what I'm hearing you say is there are certain systems in place. And if you don't understand how the system is structured, then that low-hanging fruit is what you may think is the easiest, or that's your only sort of thing that you can go for or go after. When in reality, it's like, no. Recognize that teachers under an AP, under a principal, under a superintendent, district, and then work it that way. Shoot for the moon, not for the low-hanging fruit.
Because you
Yeah.
hitting me, ain't nothing. I'm still gonna be here every year, contract after
Right.
contract.
Right.
They don't
Right.
have enough, especially if you're like the math teacher or language arts teacher. Like there are not enough of us. We are not
No.
being terminated. At most, we'll be
No.
switched to another school, which would really make us happy more than likely. So you're not hurting anybody.
No. And I, man, you're saying so much, and I'm not sure if everyone understands. What year of being in the field is this for you?
5,
For year 5. Yeah, so you're right
and I'm
there.
the
You're
lead. I'm it.
Yeah. No, I believe it. I believe it.
Been it for
I
3.
believe it. Yeah. After year 2 or 3, it's like
You know what you're
you're the
doing.
bee's knees. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because year 1 is just survive. Year 2 is like, okay, I remember this. You sort of get the mix.
Yeah.
Year 3 is when you're like, oh, okay, you're starting to understand the whole. And then if you can make it a year 4, 5, and plus, it's because you really love what it is that you do, and you understand like, hey, I know me,
Mm-hmm.
or hopefully you know you, how you move and you operate, and how you can set up things so that
Yeah.
you're able to. So it's much more sustainable. It's difficult. Yeah, when a teacher dips out after year 2, like you said, where it's just like, man, you haven't really done anything or learned really much of the
Mm-hmm.
art of teaching to be able to say like, I really don't like this. It's not
Yeah.
sufficient.
I think you made a good point though. It is an art. It is a craft that you have to hone. And it's
Yeah.
not something people there is no you can't cookie cutter it because we are differentiating. We are changing every single student. You got to figure out the thing for them. And the
Yeah.
more of them you have, like, yeah, there are some kids that something that works for them is going to work for somebody else, but you still got to go through the process. It's like mining diamonds. Like you gotta get dirty and you got
Yeah.
to be tough, but you get that reward. Those hugs the last day of school, oh my God, they're the best. like
And
that's
and
what you do it for. Because
and
the
it's
check
from the
ain't it.
kiddos. No, and it's from the kiddos who would give you the most trouble throughout the year.
Yep.
They are the ones who at the end of the year are like, Miss or Mister, like, thank you very much. And you're like, yo, never would I ever thought
Mhm.
or imagine that you would be the kiddo to write me that letter or write me that note.
Oh yeah,
Maybe
I
it's not
keep
even at
them.
the end of the year. Yeah, 2 year, 3 years later, who are like, yo, Mr.
Mhm.
Pierre, or yo, Miss Rhodes, this was what you did. Like, you didn't know it in the moment.
Mhm.
And you touched on it earlier of like, we truly are farmers of the future. Like,
Yep.
we're not like a salesperson where like quarterly you're like, oh, I see my grades, or I made this quarter, I'm in the red or in the black.
Yep.
It's gonna be years later that
Mhm.
that hard work and toil that you put in will
Yep.
bring to fruition like this young person who now has this confidence in themselves.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Like
Yeah.
that's true. I mean, I can tell you 2 teachers right now, probably 3 off the top of my head from high school, and that's 20
Yeah.
years ago. Oh my God.
Yeah.
20 years ago for me that really even to this day they are like the people, the
Yeah.
teachers, like Mr. Nail, shout out. He was
Yeah.
like I didn't skip on senior skip day. Like everybody was dipped out and I was in class by myself. He was like, pop quiz, pass your grade. And I was like, yeah. He's like, write your name backwards. And I was like, score, I could do that. My name is easy,
Yeah.
And he was like, this is just a lesson in responsibility. This is what you're responsible for doing. And I was like, and he was fresh out of college. And that was senior year of high school. But what it taught me years later, right, he'd always been teaching because he was teaching me geography because I'd already run out of classes to take because I'm an overachiever, sorry. And and so I took geography again. I hate social studies, just FYI. There are lots of stories about me and teaching social studies. It's very bad. And it is. I'll have to tell y'all one day, another day. But it was the right. Oh, that's an episode. It's hilarious. It was awful. But he showed me what responsibility can look like. And then for me, I was like, oh my God, he's not that much older than me. Because at that point I was 17 and he was like 23, 24. So we weren't that far apart in age, but maturity wise, we were pretty far apart. High school brain and post college brain, totally different, but you don't know that then. But as I got older, that lesson seemed to change. Like it was like, oh, it was cool. At first it was, I got an A just for writing my name. That's how I felt. 5 years later, I was like, that responsibility word kept sticking out. Then I had my first kid, and it was like that accountability piece, like doing what you got to do, even when everybody else is like, whatever. No one was looking, you know, because my mom wouldn't have known. She was working full time. I was driving to school. I was doing what I had to do, staying after to play volleyball. Like, she wouldn't have known. But it was those lessons. And here I am now, 20 years later, and it still sticks with me. No one has to see what you're doing for you to do it. So you've got to do the right thing. But it was a 20-year lesson 20 years ago, and it's still sticking, you know? So I'm just saying, like, but teachers taught me that. Like, my mom was a great mom. I love my mom, but there was things that I learned in school. You know, your parents tell you something, it's in one ear, not the other. Somebody else says it. It's the way they say it. It's the way they present it. Because it's not that he said these words. It's that I physically had to do something that showed I was there. I was present. So I had to take that quiz. So, you know, it's like
you
that.
you mentioned that teacher, that geography teacher. Were there any others? If you can name off three teachers who had such a major impact.
So Mr. Neal, because of that. Mr. Culkin was he came in my 10th grade year as my chorus teacher, advanced chorus, because I loved to sing when I was a kid, because I wanted to be Mariah Carey when I grew up. So I learned that you can't switch bodies or lives. So, but he used to tell me, you can sing, and I was like, but I sound so squeaky. Like, as you can hear, my voice is very, like, it's pitchy. It is what it is. I've been this way my whole life. But he would give me, like, the hardest piece of music. He was like, I won't play it until you learn to sing it. Like, so he made me learn to read sheet music. And he was like, if this is what you want, you can do whatever you want, but you got to do the work. So he would print sheet music. You know, this is back in the day when teachers would, like, give you whatever you needed. So he gave me sheet music, and I would go home, and this is, like, right before the internet popped off, you know, and I would have to learn I would have to know my scales, because I had no way of playing this. I had to know my scales, and I had to figure it out. And it was something that interested me, but he took that interest, you know, and he really honed it, you know, like, he really put it, like, he fostered it, and he gave me knowledge that I could never replace. And so now, like, I sing on choir at my church, and I was like, I know these skills and you guys don't. It makes me feel like I have a tool in my toolbox. Though it might not mean anything to anybody else, it was about the hard work for me. It was like, you taught me to, if I want it, to do it. Like, don't talk about it, do it, you know, and be okay with failure, and be okay with getting up, dusting yourself off, doing it again. Like, be okay with that. And be okay with learning, because that's growth. You got to learn to get there. So, yeah, he was one. And then I have another one. I know what she looks like, and I don't know why. Like, her name is escaping with me, but I know her last name started with the A. She was just really mean. She was so mean, but I liked her. Her meanness was she set standards for us. Like, she was like, I don't do failures. Like, you're not going to fail my class. But she would say it like the GPA in my class, like, the score had to be a certain level, or she would just fail you. Like, she didn't care what you actually got. Like, if you don't hit this mark, like, you weren't going to make it.
It's a no.
I don't know. Right. It's either you did it or you didn't. And I don't even think I never did bad at her class. So I was so afraid of messing it up. And she was language arts, and I hated that too.
Ooh.
She made me read. Sad. But guess what? Those standards are real. And now I'm like, it kind of ties this lesson very quickly that my mom used to say, you know, life is like the floors of your life, the standards of your life are like an elevator. And everybody, when you go to the nicest hotel, everybody can go in the front door, right? Yeah. So anybody's welcome to the lobby. So it's where everybody hangs out. And then, but in order to go to the first floor, you got to have a certain amount of money, right? Because first floor is like, those are your okay rooms. They're not great, but they're not terrible, you know, okay. But only those that can be okay can go to that floor. And then you get to second and third floor, like, you get better amenities as you go up higher and higher, but it's going to cost you more, whether it's more time, more money, more energy, more education, whatever it's going to cost you. So the higher up you go, the better quality people that you have to be in order to stay with me. So the higher I go, in order for you to be with me, you got to go higher. And if you don't, then we're no longer together. So you can't, it's not to say that people are beneath you, but it's to say you have to set your standards so high that your circle standards improve also. And if people want to be with you, you should be bringing them with you. And if they aren't willing to go, you got to be willing to leave them on the floor they're at. Like, you can't stay. I can't say I want 14 karat gold faucets. I can't stay on that's not a first floor amenity. You know what I'm saying?
No,
I need diamond studded mirrors, and that ain't no first floor amenity. So I got to go to the penthouse. And so it's about your standards. You got to either come with me or get left behind. You know what I'm saying? Like my daddy used to say, get right or get left. I'm a military brat, my bad.
Amen. Get right or get left.
Absolutely. That's what he used to say. Hoo-ah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We could spend ad nauseum so much time on all the things that could be fixed, all the things that are wrong with education, the system and how it's all jacked up and whatnot. However, I want to keep it balanced. What's bringing you joy at the moment? That could be professionally, that could be personally, but just in general, what's bringing you joy?
Honestly, this podcast is, the podcast that I'm doing with the Real Teachers of Atlanta, only because I'm looking at it as a business, right? And you want to see it's like a baby. You want to see it succeed. And I'm very much like an instant gratification. I have failed at a few things in life, but only a few things. So I'm used to getting the good grades and getting what I want, right? And I want it to be like now, you know what I mean? And it's really challenging me to take it's forcing me to take my time and to think more I didn't think I was going to get this out of it, honestly. But like my friends that I do it with, like one of my friends, Joya, she's so chill and calm. She's like, Nikki, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like we're getting, I'm like, we only have 90 subscribers. And she's like, but that's more than we had yesterday. And I'm like, but it's only 90. And I've like worked out a formula on how quickly we can get to this 1,000 subscribers. And she's like, but why? You know? So it's really like, it is truly forcing me to take my time. And that is, I'm very much a let's go, rapid fire person. That's a challenge. That's what's bringing me joy, but it's also making me really expand in other areas. And I'm all about, I love to grow and learn and tap into skills I may not have thought I had, which is interesting.
Learning process. Yeah. Dope. Is there anything that you have read or are reading that you would highly recommend to others?
I do not enjoy reading. I don't. However, I don't enjoy reading things that aren't like applicable, if that makes sense. So I don't read for fun, but I do have books I have read that I love. But I do like, so it's going to be really corny, but I do like to read like the Spanish to English dictionary. I do like to read manuals. I love to read technical things. Like I got a GoPro. I read that manual probably way too many times. I like to read for filth because I'm no better than the middle schoolers that I teach, honestly. So I like to read things that make me think or teach me things. So I love to read articles. I don't like to watch the news. I don't like to watch a lot of like movies or TV or anything like that. Like I have been watching Abbott Elementary. That's like really the only show I've watched in years. I get it. It's a good show. But I want my brain to be pure, and I like to learn. But technical reading, for those of you that like to read, is very interesting because you learn a lot of different words. You learn words that mean things beyond surface, right? Like you learn about ad hoc, you know, like we don't say ad hoc at school, but we do ad hoc all the time. So to me, it's like, ooh, I can do this. Like it teaches me some, I don't know. It's so weird. That's not my brain works.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm shameful. I know kids are probably like, this body's weird.
Nah, I don't say weird. I just let the kiddos know, like, hey, that's you. Whatever floats your boat, that's what's up.
I'm very geeky, but like, for example, TikTok, like the analytics, I love to look at it. I'm like, okay, how can I make this number higher? And like, it's almost like gambling would be like for someone who's addicted to gambling. That's how I am about numbers. It's so random.
Nice.
But I love it. like it's such a, I don't know. I'm very much a math teacher.
As am I. So I'm right there with you.
So
as
you get
talk
it.
about
You're like, yeah, I got you.
I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it.
I don't
And
find my people a lot.
we are so far between. We are
Yeah.
so few. However, once we find each other, it's all over. We'll put each other in contact.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that, we can have a gathering. Speaking of numbers, one of the closing questions I like to ask folks who are on the podcast is, if you were to create a playlist, I say 5 songs, however many you like, it's totally what would be those 5 songs that would be on your playlist?
All right. Number 1, Nuck If You Buck, Crime Mob.
Yes.
That's my anthem. Number 2, what is it? It is called, oh my God. Number 2 would be, what's the name of it? I got it on a playlist. That's what's so bad about it. I could tell it to you. It's the Atlanta song. Dang. Sorry, Not Sorry. I'm already the Great. You Don't Know Me, T.I.
Okay, that's.
Oh my God. Who else I like? Literally anything from Ludacris Chicken and Beer album.
Okay.
That's so throwback.
Luda,
okay. Love Luda, yes. Game Over, Lil Flip. And oh my God, what's the song? And Lion of Judah, the gospel song. Is that the one I want to pick though?
5 is just but the skeleton, the parameters. However more you want, that's totally okay. Because I already see it. I feel like I'm seeing a through line here of, the South, particularly Georgia,
yes,
is well represented. So I know where you were at right now. Decatur's where it's greater.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yes, I just feel like, what's that song? If I Can't Say a Word, who sings that? That's the other one. That's what's in my head right now.
Got it.
Because you gotta have a gospel, like you gotta have a Let Me Cry in the backseat of this car right there. Because we all need that jam, okay? Nuck If You Buck gets me together. Like, okay, you better be ready. Just going into school, and then you gotta have it. If I don't say a word, I'm way out. Because that's what you said. You tapped out.
Oh.
Yes.
Bye, oh bye.
Listen, I tell my kids all the time, like, I used to be a thug in my past life. I don't know, but I feel like that's a reality because my musical preferences are really, like, I like Ophelia if I'm Natalie Merchant. I've liked that forever. I don't know why, but I like Natalie Merchant. I know, right? Took you there, right? It was like,
the
what?
Whole spectrum.
Yeah. And that's me. I got it all.
Yep. Some Sarah McLachlan, Natalie Imbruglia. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Look.
Jewel. Oh my gosh. Can't forget Jewel. We like Jewel. Her weird self. I like her too. I know. Alanis Morissette. Yes.
That's a jagged little pill right there too.
Absolutely. I like her too. Yep.
I feel like the mathematicians in both of us. Fit tit for tat. Yeah. I think the music makes sense though. When you like math, the music is logical to you, right? Like it's I don't know, but I've always felt like math and science and music, they always kind of they click.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it.
This cover was great, but knowing that the community that listens to this podcast doesn't have an hour like some folks, which is why I like to keep each episode to about 15, 20 or so minutes. This was a good one. Folks. I can tell you right now, Miss Rhodes will be back. I'm looking forward to listening to her next episode. And so I think the gems from this one was, 1, setting boundaries, knowing what those boundaries are, and then 2, have yourself a fantastic playlist that's going to get you through the day.
Yes.
If you can have those 2 things, you're going to be all right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This was
Look, you
dope.
can
This was
chop this
dope.
up to part one and part two, and then we can.
Oh,
I'll be
definitely.
back. I'll be back whenever
Definitely.
you want. Okay.
Definitely. And same. Anytime you need a male voice on your podcast, just give
Yep,
me a holler. I'll be there.
I will, because we're looking for
Sweet.
it.
Sweet. So, folks,